welcome to Ballot Battleground Nevada. I'm your host, Ben Margiott, a reporter at KRNV News 4 in Reno. I'm passionate about making politics in this critical battleground state more digestible to the average voter and pushing past the talking points to press politicians for answers. On this show, we take deep dives into the people, ideas, and debates shaping Silver State politics. Midway through her second term in the U.S. Senate, Nevada's senior senator Catherine Cortez Masto is becoming a more prominent figure in the Democratic Party. She's now chairing the so-called Mod Squad, a group of moderate Democrats in the upper house that believe pursuing moderate policies is a better way to win elections. But under the second Trump administration, Democrats are facing pressure from their ranks to fight harder against Trump. That tension took center stage last week when there was a dust-up on the Senate floor between Senator Cory Booker and Cortez Masto herself, with Booker saying she and other center-left Democrats are being complicit under Trump. That was one of many things we asked her about this week in an extended sit-down interview right here on Ballot Battleground Nevada. We also chatted about Medicaid cuts, the effects of the One Big Beautiful Bill, no tax on tips, Vegas tourism, tariffs, Gaza, and much more. So without further ado, our conversation with Senator Catherine Cortez Masto. And it's always a pleasure and an honor to have sitting U.S. Senator in the House this morning, Senator Catherine Cortez Masto. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, I'm excited to join you, and it's great to be home.
Absolutely. So the last time I saw you in person, at least, was kind of a cool moment for me because I'm at the park with my wife and my son, and I look around and I say, I think I recognize that haircut. That couldn't be. And sure enough, it was you walking around at one of the parks in Demonte Ranch with a friend. And I don't know if I should reveal that, for security reasons, but, just going for a Saturday morning stroll. And I, of course, had to say hello, but good to have you here now, too.
Well, listen, I'm glad you did. And I got to meet your son.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cute.
Namesake, of course, in honor of the sagebrush state here in Nevada. So you don't need any introduction for our listeners and our audience, but just in case someone has never heard of you, the senior senator from Nevada, a Democrat representing since 2016. It was the first campaign I covered, actually, and then you were reelected in 2022. You have spent some time in Reno the past couple of days. How was, or in Northern Nevada, but how was the Lake Tahoe summit yesterday? You got to go and meet up with the Nevada delegates and California delegates and talk about Big Blue.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Well, first, who doesn't have a bad time in Lake Tahoe? It's just gorgeous and always great to be home and be able to come back this time of year for the Tahoe Summit. I'm very proud to always participate in the summit, as you well know. Something that started in 1997 by both Harry Reid and Senator Feinstein, California, Nevada, and that compact and that kind of collaboration has been ongoing since then. So, and it is important. We've got to protect the lake. We've got to protect the clarity, the forest health, the basin itself, and Ben, it is a perfect example of how coming together in a bi-state way, but also nonpartisan. Everybody's coming together to protect the lake. And at a federal, state, local, and nonprofit, everybody lives there. Everybody's working. How do we preserve it? How do we ensure people can live here, recreate here? It's a great model. Yeah. It's a great model for the rest of the country and how we all should be working together to solve problems. And that's why I enjoy it. I love being a part of that, the summit every year.
Yeah, there is kind of that Nevada-California rivalry a little bit, but we have this shared gem, and we have to protect it. So you got to put that little rivalry away, and that's what that summit kind of is all about. So let's dive into kind of maybe the biggest thing that happened before you guys in the Senate came back home for your state work periods, which is, of course, the passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, President Donald Trump's signature economic package. Let's start, before we get into maybe, I know where you kind of stand on the cuts to Medicaid and whatnot. Were there elements of that bill that you liked where it was maybe hard to take that no vote? I'm thinking of maybe no tax on tips or some of the middle class tax cuts, or what did you like in that bill?
Yeah, I can tell you the no tax on tips. We actually, if you remember, we actually passed that out of the Senate separately, that legislation. Yeah. And we were able to move it. And I was hoping that legislation would be the one that was incorporated into the reconciliation bill, because there's a little different provisions in there. But at the end of the day, for all of us, I think it was how do we ensure that our hardworking middle class, those individuals that just want to get ahead, how do we keep more money in their pockets? How do we make sure the system doesn't feel rigged against them? And that for me was the focus. Listen, you go around this state, you're talking to our small businesses. There's challenge right now. There's challenges because of the tariffs. I mean, I have already been talking to some of our independent coffee shops. They're having a tough time because now they can't access the coffee. It's costing more for them to access coffee. So many of our small entrepreneurs are concerned whether they can keep their doors open because of the tariffs. So any legislation that we can help them keep more money to keep the small businesses open because they employ all of our workers here in Nevada, that's what we want. So there's some provisions in there that do that, right? That are that through the tax code that benefit some of our small businesses. I was always for that. In fact, we tried to pass that legislation before the reconciliation bill. If you remember, there was something a year prior to that we were trying to pass legislation to help our small businesses. It got incorporated into this reconciliation bill. But this was an omnibus bill. There was so much in this bill. The big piece of it, though, for me, and why I was opposed to it is because what it actually does is, in this country, for the first time, it shifts wealth away from the working class, the poor and the working class, to billionaires and big corporations. Changes in the tax code, taking away essential programs like healthcare and food assistance to so many working families, making it harder for our working families to get ahead. That was my concern. And I was very honest with our small businesses and businesses that came in to talk to me. There were provisions in there they knew I had advocated for in the past and talked with them. I said, listen, I think this is good, but you've got to know if they're going to gut healthcare, if they're going to, in Nevada, 120,000 Nevadans are going to be taken off of healthcare or not have access to Medicaid or ACA, and they're gutting the food assistance that we need for seniors and so many others, I'm not going to support it. I don't think that we have to make those types of sacrifices. I think we can do all of the above and help everyone and not sacrifice the money and the wealth going to the very wealthy on the backs of these families, quite honestly. And so I was very honest with people about it. I had so many people coming to talk to me that are hardworking families that rely on Medicaid. Most people don't realize this. I had a mother come to me and say, my daughter has a rare disease. My husband and I work, but we cannot afford the medication and what she needs for her rare disease without Medicaid. And I don't think people realize that Medicaid does just that. There are over 60% of the people in Nevada are working that access Medicaid. So it really is important that we provide the Medicaid for those families who otherwise could not afford it. Because here's what happens. There's going to be a ripple effect. There's going to be a ripple effect for people that don't have Medicaid. They're going to see their insurance premiums go up because now our emergency rooms are going to be filled with people that don't have this health care now. And it's going to be emergent care. It's not going to be preventive care.
Sure.
And then you're going to see more lines to get to our doctors, right? And so it will have a ripple effect for so many in Nevada and across the country. That wasn't worth it for me. It's just there's things that we should be fighting for, and it's all of the above. We shouldn't be playing favorites from the working class and middle class and say, okay, well, no, this time you have to suffer so the billionaires and the big corporations can get what they want permanently. And if you look at the legislation, the reconciliation, what little benefits they gave, like the tax on tips and other income tax changes that benefited the working class, it was temporary. It was only for 4 years while this administration is in office. But the permanent changes to the tax code that benefited the corporations and billionaires, that was permanent. So it was crazy to me how we were identifying what we value in this country. And I think what we should be valuing is the hard working class, those families that want to get ahead. That's my family. I'm sure that's your family. That's all of us. We just want an opportunity to get ahead, right? Just to have a good life, less stress, an opportunity for our kids, and not feel like the system is rigged against us. And it's so hard to get ahead. And I hear that from our families. And to me, that's where our fight should be. And it includes our small business, our young, our entrepreneurs who want to be a part of that. And we should be making it easier for them to open those businesses, to employ Nevadans here and be successful. The policies of this administration are not doing that, and it's just the opposite.
Circling back, you mentioned this stat, 60% of people that are on Medicaid are working. Do you believe fundamentally that you should have to work, or at least prove that you're working to be on Medicaid? You know, of course, the work requirements are the main way that, tens of thousands of people are going to potentially fall off of Medicaid here in a year or two.
Well, let's put it in perspective here. When we're talking about that other 40%, who are they? They're seniors who have already put in their time and worked and maybe can't work, or they're people with disabilities who can't work, who would love to be working, but they have a disability. So put that in perspective. This idea that people are sitting at home milking the system is not the case. And if they are, I will tell you, there is a unit in the Attorney General's office right here in the state of Nevada that I know that as an AG that went after fraud for people that were milking the system, that held them accountable. So that, let's put that in perspective. The other thing people need to understand is there are already work requirements. Of course, we should have work requirements. You're working, you want to access Medicaid, you prove that you're working. Those work requirements already exist. But what the administration did was put more barriers in front of families to prove that they were working, with the intent that it would be more difficult for people who are just going through their daily life, getting to a job, putting food on the table, taking care of their kids at night, moving through that system and just trying to move paycheck to paycheck. It would be more difficult for them to jump through more hoops, so they will just automatically fall off the system. So what this administration has basically done is put more barriers in front of working families to prove that they're working, with the intent of having them fall out of the system, so now they are no longer accessing Medicaid and now saving those dollars for the federal government. But what the federal government has essentially done is putting these hardworking families out of jobs, because now they can't access health care that they need for their kids or for themselves. And if they can't access health care, then they get sick. And now they can't get the health care they need. They potentially could lose their job. I mean, it's a backward way of thinking about how we should be helping others, and really looking at our healthcare system and saying, this should be about outcomes. This should be about ensuring people have access to healthcare, they can afford it, and they can access it no matter where they live, and make sure that we are doing right by them and those outcomes. Because even if we can start on the preventative care, which the ACA provided to so many families, then we don't see them on the back in emergency rooms in acute care. We're taking care of them on the front end. That saves dollars. That saves dollars in Medicaid and Medicare in so many places across the country. And that's where we should be focused.
Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the main driver of our economy here in the Silver State, which is, of course, tourism. There's been a number of stories in the recent weeks about, is Las Vegas dying? Is tourism there falling off? Is Las Vegas dying? From your perspective, you're, I'm sure, taking a look at this very closely. It's because it is without tourism dollars and tourists coming to our state, obviously we'd be in a dire situation. Is Las Vegas dying? What can be done at the federal level to prevent that?
No, Las Vegas isn't dying, but here's what's happening because, again, of the policies of this administration not recognizing that travel and tourism in general, whether it's domestic travel or tourism or international, that means travelers coming here, is a $1 billion industry for this country. It raises revenue for this country. And it's something that is important for states like Nevada, but other states like Florida and other states where you're seeing travel and people, whether you live in this country or you're traveling from a foreign country, to come here. And because, let's just take one policy, which is the trade policy. The blanket trade policy of this administration, particularly like against a partner like Canada, which, by the way, we have an agreement with already that this administration has blown up, an agreement that the Trump administration entered into the first time they were in office. It's USMCA. And then when they get in the second time, they just ignore that agreement that they had with Canada. Let me just put that out there. But when you attack Canada and the rhetoric from this administration saying it should be the 51st state, put exorbitant tariffs on a country that is our partner and is a trade partner and an ally and a neighbor of ours because of the border. We are seeing now Canadians rightfully saying, we're done with the United States. We're not going to support you. We're not going to buy your products. And by the way, we're not traveling to this country, to the United States. So because of that, we are seeing in places like Nevada less tourism coming in from Canada. We've seen the numbers decrease. And I was actually just recently in Canada meeting with the Prime Minister, and we were having this conversation. And I just happened to have one of the general counsels for one of the foreign ministers came up to me and said, I'm an attorney. We have our conference every year in Las Vegas, and we canceled it.
Wow, really?
Because of the rhetoric and the trade policies. And so we're seeing that happen. Now, that's just one piece of it. What you also see this administration doing is imposing tougher time for people to get visas to even travel into this country or getting detained. And if they're coming in for tourism and travel as tourists, it's getting slowed down. That's part of it. And then the other for just domestic travel, people are getting squeezed with the high prices. I see it now. This administration said on day one they were going to lower costs for families. They're not. We see grocery prices still high, housing costs, energy costs. I see it when I'm home and talking to not only my family, but friends. And when I'm out in Nevada, the costs are still high. And when you have high costs, you have less discretionary income to do travel, tourism, to go and travel to places like Las Vegas. So you're going to see an impact. So yes, we are seeing it not just in Nevada, but we're seeing it across the country. And I've been raising an alarm from the very beginning with this administration. And every time I have the trade ambassador before me, my Senate Finance, or anybody from whether it's trade or even the Secretary of Treasury saying, do you realize your policies are having a negative impact on trade and travel into the United States and throughout the United States, which is impacting many of our communities in a negative way. And I don't think that they realize or even think about it in those terms, so it's not a priority for them to address.
Should the Epstein files be released?
I absolutely believe in transparency, but I think that transparency has to be balanced with the privacy of the victims. And you know this, as AG, I worked on human trafficking prevention, not only to hold those traffickers accountable and put the laws in place right here in Nevada to do just that. But a lot of my work has been on making sure that these victims are on a pathway to survivorship, and we're protecting and helping them move through to become survivors. I always think you have to balance the two, particularly with any crime or violent crime. But when it comes to human trafficking, we have to remember that we don't want to re-traumatize the victims or their families. And so there has to be the balance for the two when we're talking about the Epstein files. So yes, there should be transparency. We should understand what happened. This guy was a human trafficker. And so we need to understand, are there more victims? Yes, we want to go after and hold people accountable. But at the same time, we have to do right and protect the privacy of those victims and make sure they become survivors. I don't think the Department of Justice or the administration is really focused on either one of those and that balance. And it's unfortunate. DOJ, I think, knows better, particularly the work that I've done with DOJ in the past, or even around human trafficking prevention. It is holding perpetrators accountable, but it's also, we have programs and funding at a federal level for the victims and put them on a pathway to survivorship. We have just fought for that funding here in Nevada to do just that. Anybody who was exploited through sexual exploitation or human trafficking, anything, we want to give them the resources they have and need to become survivors. So you have to balance the both. I just don't think the administration really cares about that, or DOJ is thinking about it.
What do you make of House Republicans leaving for their recess to go back home to their districts to kind of, as some people would say, avoid a vote on transparency surrounding the Epstein files?
Yeah, I just think it's a challenging time, and they should be focused on, one, solving problems for this country and what Americans and the issues they care about. But I also, too, think that there's nothing wrong with the transparency and questioning what's going on. Again, it goes back to Republicans in Congress and the administration playing politics with this very issue.
Seems like there's a little bit more momentum now for banning members of Congress from selling, buying, trading stocks, their family members from trading stocks. There was a measure that it would prohibit lawmakers from doing that. You'd have to divest your holdings within 180 days of the bill's enactment. I know you are previously a sponsor of similar legislation, so you do support banning members of Congress from trading stocks?
I do. I do think it's important we ensure not only to the general public the transparency and the integrity of what we are doing as we get inside information in the policies and the legislation that we're working on, but just the perception that we are not taking advantage. Getting access to information that nobody else has, and making money off of that. And that's the intent here with this legislation that we have introduced in the past. You've talked about it, that I support, and we have reintroduced it again this Congress to try to get it passed.
Are you divested from individual stocks? Do you
Yeah,
trade
we
your
don't
own?
we don't own individual stocks. We have mutual funds, and we don't control the trading in the mutual funds.
Is that something you did prior to getting this role and coming into the Senate, or?
Well, I will say this. I'm not sure what you mean by that, but let me just say this. I think it is important, and that's the transparency about this is key, and this is how we know whether an individual has individual stocks in their trading and when they trade, is the financial reports that we have to file as elected officials. I filed it when I was a state elected as Attorney General, and I file it now as a United States Senator, a federal disclosure statement on my finances, so that everybody can see kind of right here what my husband and I own, what stocks, and if there's any trading going on. I do think that transparency is important, and filing those reports are important.
You recently took a vote that was against a couple resolutions to block weapons sales to Israel. Bucking your own party, a majority of Senate Democrats voted to support those resolutions. Nevada Current reached out to you for comment. Your office didn't have a comment, but we have you here today. Why should the U.S. government continue to fund weapons sales to Israel?
Yeah, well, I do have a comment, and I gave a comment, so let me just be clear about that. And a couple of things. That legislation wasn't supported by a majority of Democrats, but I will say this. There were a number of Democrats who also voted the way that I did. And I think this is the reason why. It's a tough issue. It's a very complex issue when we're talking about what's happening in the Middle East with Israel and Gaza. And I've been very, very candid about this. We have to, Israel and the people that live in Israel are our allies. We have to support them. And we have many connections with Israel. But I also think that what is happening in Gaza is horrific, and we have to get aid to Gaza. We literally can't have children and people dying because they can't access food. We have to make sure that they can access the humanitarian aid and hold whoever's holding it up, if it's Israel, accountable for that. I think it's Netanyahu and his administration, who I disagree with on many things, but I support the people of Israel. That's one. Two, I also realize there's a number of hostages that are still in Gaza because Hamas refuses to sit down and engage in a ceasefire and release those hostages. They need to be released. They need to go home. And I do think we have an opportunity now with some of the Arab countries who also believe that Hamas cannot govern and should be entering into a ceasefire to help us. And we should be leveraging that in the Middle East right now.
You have access to some of the highest, most classified information, the best intel in matters around the world, obviously in your role as U.S. Senator. I mean, do you believe that Israel is withholding or blocking food and aid into Gaza?
I can't. Well, let me just say this. What I am hearing publicly and what I'm hearing from my colleagues who have been to Israel recently, yes, there are concerns that they're seeing the trucks lined up, and the trucks are not being able to are being stopped from moving forward, and that's why my colleagues and I have sent a letter just recently to Netanyahu, to the administration, saying you cannot hold up this aid. You have to move forward here. You have to get the aid there, and holding them accountable. And I think the other part of this is many of us are concerned about what else we can do to ensure the aid gets through an independent organization that can get the food that is necessary into Gaza and get it there and not be impeded by Netanyahu and his government.
What do you say to the people who would say the United States has this one major piece of leverage, which is the continued sale of weapons and arms to Israel, and people that would say, why not use that leverage to get a better outcome or get more aid into Gaza?
Well, let me just say this. The resolution that you just talked about, the two pieces of resolution, wouldn't have stopped the weapons transfer because they've already transferred. So it was really a symbolic kind of move here by some of my colleagues. And listen, that's the way they want to show that they're supporting Israel. They can. My way of showing that support is in other opportunities, like the letter with my colleagues in working in a bipartisan way with Israel, saying, hey, you cannot do this. You have to stop moving. You have to stop this impeding this food and aid from getting into Gaza. And I think many people, rightfully so, are outraged by that. So there's many things we can do. Let me say this also. I am one of these people that thinks the people of Israel and their security and protection, I don't think that we should stop that security and protection for the people of Israel just because I disagree with Netanyahu and how he's managing things. That's like other countries then harming Americans because they disagree with Trump. So we have to be thoughtful. It's such a complex issue, and we have to be very thoughtful at how we move through this.
You had a high-profile disagreement, shall we call it, with Senator Cory Booker from New Jersey a week or so ago, where he essentially called you and other maybe more moderate Democrats complicit under the second Trump administration. What was your reaction to that?
Well, let's put it in context. This was about a time when I was moving to, there were about 9 pieces of a legislation, bipartisan legislation that came out of the Judiciary Committee to support law enforcement across the country. They were unanimously passed out of committee. We were trying to get them to the floor to pass them. And there was one person that was blocking that. And couldn't get that person to shake loose. Sometimes they're anonymous and you don't know who they are. So I said, okay, I'm done. This is important legislation to keep our community safe. Went to the floor and I asked for a live UC to shake out who was the one person opposing it. And I found out it was Cory Booker. How he manages or what his arguments are for opposing it is up to him. But to me, 2 wrongs don't make a right. If you're disagreeing with Trump, that's one thing, and there's a way to fight back and push back. I know, and I don't have to be told how to do it. I do it all the time when I think the policies of this administration are harming our state. But I don't think a policy of passing bipartisan legislation out of a committee that Cory Booker sits on and could have opposed it at that time was the answer to pushing back on Donald Trump, particularly when it provides resources to our communities to keep them safe, to address even some of the stuff we've talked about, child exploitation issues and many other things. I think you've got to pick your battles, and there is a way to push back and fight back against this administration. But Democrats attacking Democrats is not the answer.
Back here in Nevada, you've already endorsed Attorney General Aaron Ford in the race for Nevada governor. There's another candidate that may be jumping in, maybe a couple more. Why have you already endorsed Aaron Ford in that Democratic primary and in the Nevada governor's race?
Yeah, I've known General Ford. I've watched him, not only as a leader in State House, but also as Attorney General, a job that I held for 8 years. And I've watched him. He has fought for Nevada. He has taken on big pharma to protect our communities. He has worked with law enforcement to ensure we're addressing the fentanyl fight and focused on human trafficking prevention. He has worked on behalf of this state, throughout this state, and has been elected statewide. And I know he can do the job. And I think that he would be a very good governor for the state of Nevada.
As we kind of wrap up here, anytime we have you or Senator Rosen or Mark Amodei here, I always have to bring it back to the USPS. And of course, our listeners are familiar with the debacle it was last year about proposing to move our mail, reroute it through Sacramento. There was a kerfuffle or a dust-up recently where a USPS press release announcing that they were going to keep it in Reno kind of disappeared off the website. I mean, have you heard anything, especially amid all of the budget cuts and Doge and this was supposed to be a cost-cutting move about the Trump administration under the new Postmaster General trying to start up that effort once again, or do you think that issue is settled?
I'm not sure it's settled, but we haven't heard it kind of poking its head out again. Let me just say this, though. This is one issue, like many, where you're going to see the entire delegation not only monitoring what's going on here, but pushing back and fighting back as much as possible. I can't think of a better issue that shows how when there is a decision made by somebody in Washington that has no idea about Nevada and the people that live here and how we work together, they don't realize the impact that they are having in one decision that they think is kind of an administrative decision that for us is a big deal. And so they will see. Listen, I say Nevada is independent. We're strong. And this is a perfect example of how Nevadans coming together, fighting back against Washington bureaucrats who really are making bad decisions.
All right. What else do you have planned on your Northern Nevada swing here?
I am getting ready to do my rural swing. Every August I get into the rural community. So I'm excited. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm going to be driving into Lovelock, and we will get over to Winnemucca and Elko. We're going to get down into Ely, and then we'll come around into Nye County area. And so it's fun. I enjoy it. I'll be on the road, and not going to tell you where and when, but I'll share. I'll share as I've been there. I'll share my travel through Nevada. It's just a beautiful place.
And then lastly, what's the biggest thing when you do go back to D.C., what it's probably at the end of the month here, that you're going to be tracking and following this fall?
For the work that I'm doing?
Yeah.
I can tell you, we just passed out of committee. I sat on Banking and Housing Committee. We just passed out of the committee an omnibus bill around housing to build more housing supply and affordable housing. It's the first time that committee passed that kind of bill in 17 years. It was unanimous, again, and bipartisan. So my goal is, and it's good for Nevada. There was legislation that I put in there that helps us do just that in Nevada, both the home reauthorization program and a piece of legislation I had for manufactured home owners and communities here in the state. My goal is now, let's get it on the floor of the Senate. Let's get it passed. Let's get it to the House. Let's get it to the president. This will be good for us to figure out and work on how we continue to lower housing costs for so many Nevadans.
All right. Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, thank you so much for giving us over a half an hour of your time, which I know is very valuable. So appreciate you coming in. It's always a pleasure.
Oh, I enjoy it. Thank you.
If you made it to the end of this episode, I really appreciate it. If you have guest ideas, episode ideas, questions, comments, compliments, concerns, anything at all, I want to hear from you. Shoot me an email at bjmargiott, MARGIOTT, at sbgtv.com and put Ballot Battleground Nevada in the subject line. And if you have a moment, I'd really appreciate it if you left a rating and a review. That helps the podcast show up higher in searches so more people can discover Ballot Battleground Nevada. Thanks for listening.